For the next 3 years, the Mpc 60 Mark I and Mark II would dominate the sample-based instrument market. Then, in 1994, the next member of Akai's Mpc family had arrived, the Mpc 3000. Now, while the Mpc 60 established a streamlined groundwork for self-contained music production hardware, the Mpc 3000 completely revolutionized it. Several features that would go on to become staples of future models were first presented in the 3000, such as a 32-voice polyphony, built-in FX, and a low-pass filter with resonance control. This made it the go-to instrument for music producers, particularly those working in R&B, rap, and other sample-based music genres. Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, Teddy Riley, Dr. Dre, No ID, Warren G, Just Blaze, and dozens upon dozens of other notable producers have used the 3000 in their production. But the one that became the most notable to do so was a humble producer from Detroit who went by the name of Jay Dilla. Now, if you're of a certain age, I'd say around my age or so, or older, so 30s or older, then you more than likely are familiar with the name Dilla, either just by name or by his work, even if you weren't necessarily aware of the latter. Now, everyone always says the same thing. Roger Lynn created the Mpc, but Jay Dilla humanized it. Now, up to this point, one of the big selling points for drum machines, samplers, and sequencers were that it allowed solo artists to compose their own music without the assistance of other musicians and still have it sound professional. So let's say you have a really good ear for melodies. So finding a good sample is something you can do with ease. Your hardware allows you to add basic percussion, but you know damn well that you couldn't perform and record those elements on beat if your life depended on it. But this was anticipated by Lynn. So a TC, time correction, or later quantize in the later models of the Mpc, button was included. With this feature, all the user had to do was make an estimated attempt at playing the sounds on beat, and the quantize feature would make sure everything was aligned to the grid. This was a game-changing feature for producers and utilized in thousands of songs produced on the Mpc for years to come. But when the 3000 came out in '94, Dilla had an idea. Why not turn off the quantize and play the instruments in the composition by feel, as if you were playing it live? Dilla had always been fascinated by the element of human error when playing music live. He would always point out that 1 millisecond where an element of the music, particularly the percussion, would come in slightly slower or faster when layered against the other musical elements. Having previously been a drummer himself, he was able to capture, transpose, and highlight that flaw and ingrain it as a signature part of his production style, using the uniqueness of natural human error to add color and character to all of his beats, thus birthing one of the most original and now identifiable production styles to ever be introduced to hip-hop music. This method of production caused the beats to feel like they were played by actual musicians, as opposed to being replayed on the Mpc pads. Well, let me be clear. The music being sampled was obviously played by live musicians at some point of the original recording, but turning off the quantize on the 3000 allowed the new rhythm/arrangement made of the sample chops composed by the current producer to feel like it was played by live musicians initially. To put it more simply, turning off the quantize gave the music more of a swing. Some attribute this to Dilla's musical intuition. Some say that it's all the Mpc 3000. Well, that it's mostly the Mpc 3000. I mean, you obviously have to have some type of skill to pick out samples, but some are saying that the natural swing designed by Roger Lynn, particularly in this model, in the 60 and Mark I and Mark II as well, particularly in the 3000 for some reason, they say that the engine or something in it is just built with the perfect amount of swing. I'm not sure. I can't attest to that. I don't really understand the schematics of the whole thing. But some people even go as far to say that no Mpc that followed after the 3000 could ever compare sonically. Now, whether you agree or disagree, Jay Dilla's personal Mpc 3000 sits today in the National Museum of African American History and Culture within the Smithsonian. Now, he's the only hip-hop producer to have his own Mpc on display, the only Mpc of any model to ever be given that honor. So that has to count for something rather significant, right? Well, I have no personal experience with the Mpc 3000, so I can't speak to its sonic capabilities and whether it's truly superior to music produced in other MPCs. But I will say that the Mpc 3000 is still highly revered amongst producers who utilize hardware for its supposed warmth and punchiness. Now, as far as the unit specifications, the Mpc 3000 contains 16-bit, 44.1 kHz sampling, and up to 32 megabytes of memory and full editing capability. In fact, its sampling capabilities are comparable to rack mount samplers. It also contains a 16 dynamic pad layout like the other MPCs with velocity and aftertouch, analog filter sweeping and resonance, analog envelope control, and 32-note polyphony. Something to make note of is the fact that, with the exception of the drum sounds, it does not feature a built-in oscillator or synthesizer engine. However, your samples could be shaped and colored by the analog-style edit functions for creating lo-fi sounds. Filter swept pads and drum loops and other strangely modulated effects. These inclusions effectively made the Mpc 3000 as powerful as any of the top-line synthesizers. Again, I don't know, I've never used this MPC, I'm just going off of research. Now, additionally, the 3000 was excellent at sequencing. 20 songs, 99 sequences, 99 tracks, and up to 75,000 notes. It all contains a total MIDI implementation and SCSI and disk drive storage as well. A limited edition model with a black finish was also released and, in my opinion, looks 1,000 times better than the standard edition. Now, as far as availability, you can currently find both the original 3000 and limited edition models on eBay, Reverb, and some other vintage musical instrument sites if you do a little bit of searching. As far as the pricing goes, this is one of the most expensive. It may possibly be the single most expensive MPC on the market, even compared to the newer ones like the Mpc X. The price can go anywhere from $2,500 for one of the original models to up to $8,000, maybe even a little bit more for the limited edition with customized surplus features. Now, I know that seems outrageous, and it certainly is. Paying that much for a piece of gear is a lot of money. The most that I've spent is about $1,800 on my ASR-10, and I still can't get the goddamn thing to work. My rack mount samplers are all about between $500 and $1,200, but $8,000? Shit. Now, as I stated before, I'm not so sure that there's truly anything that makes the Mpc 3000 superior to other models. Being a vintage unit, it's pretty much a given that it would sound better on that merit alone compared to newer MPCs. That part you don't have to convince me of. But in comparison to the other vintage MPCs of the period, I don't know. Personally, I believe this high of a price point may possibly be due to the history associated with this model. Primarily its connection to J Dilla's legacy, more so than any sonically superior capabilities. But again, that's just my assumption. I have not used the 3000, so I do not speak from experience. But I could be completely wrong, you know. Maybe the Mpc 2000 is God's gift to hip-hop production, and maybe nothing can ever compare to its sound. I don't fucking know. Maybe one day in the far distant future I can get a hold of one and determine for myself if I ever have that money laying around. Or if the price ever comes down to a more reasonable range, maybe. Nevertheless, the Mpc 3000 has cemented its legacy as the poster child of golden era hip-hop production, as the first MPC to humanize the sound of sample-based music production.